Update, brought to you by Penn State Sports Night. I'm Sophia Koch alongside Jeremy Rose. Our beat reporters have been around University Park attending and covering games in order to bring you this week's sports update. Let's get right into it.
Following a week off, the Penn State Nittany Lions traveled to Camp Randall Stadium to take on the Wisconsin Badgers in a Big Ten matchup that many had circled as a trap game. The Nittany Lions faced a major setback when starting quarterback Drew Aller went down with an injury before the half. But I'm joined alongside Josh Bartosik, who was able to witness the magic of Bo Pribula in person as he led Penn State to a 28-13 win on the road.
Yeah, the lights were not too bright for Bo Pribula. You can see right here. You look there. He's got that dog in there. It's easy to say. Look, you go on the road to a hostile environment in Camp Randall and your first true start as a quarterback, or second half start, we'll call it that. And he did what he needed to do. 6 rushes for 28 yards. We kind of knew that coming in. Yeah. That's the style of play that Bo Pribula brings to the table. It's the rushing attack that is so dominant with him. But in the air, just 2 incompletions on the day, 11 for 13, 98 yards, a touchdown. Those 2 incompletions came on that first drive in the third quarter for Penn State, and they were pretty good throws regardless. They weren't throws into double coverage, throws out of the way. They were really, really nice throws regardless. He was able to seam the ball into some really nice spots for Penn State, and he helped them make a second half comeback. And the big thing with him is that his explosive running ability made Wisconsin have to, respect that. Yeah. And at the same time, that opened up the ground game for both Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen, who had really, really big second halves. Katron Allen had the rushing touchdown near the end of the game. But the style of play that Bo Pribula brings were actually played in Penn State's favor in this one.
Yeah, played in Penn State's favor for sure. You talked about that Katron Allen, Nick Singleton. They had really, really big second halves, but the big problem that has been plaguing Penn State all season long has been their first half struggles. Obviously, they turned it around with Bo Pribula in the second half. They've done a great job working in the second half all year. But what does this Penn State team need to do to come out firing in this first half, especially with Ohio State coming up this weekend?
They've got to stay consistent. Look, this is a Penn State team that the last 2 games, the first drive, they have been marching down the field. You go to that USC game. It was one of the best first drives we've seen, one of the best offensive drives we've seen from Penn State. Offensive pass interference on Julian Fleming stops that drive. They get a field goal. What happens the rest of the first half? Nothing. No more points. Against Wisconsin, they're driving down the field. They were down 3-0 early in that game. 4th and 1, Drew Aller fumbles, and they don't get the conversion. And then in the rest of the first half, besides the Nick Singleton receiving touchdown, nothing. So for Penn State, it's about staying consistent. We know that they have the capability to score and put up a lot of points. We've seen it. We know what Andy Koltenicki's offense can do, him coming over from Kansas. He's shown it, but they've got to stay consistent. You cannot have these slow starts, especially against a team like Ohio State with players like Quinson Junkins, Travion Henderson, and Will Howard at quarterback, and Jeremiah Smith as well, being the big wide receiver that they have. They always have a wide receiver. They can score at will. You cannot afford another slow start because otherwise it's going to be a long day in Beaver Stadium.
And if they're going to get that fast start, it's going to come down to the key plays of a certain couple of players. Who are those players who are going to need to really outperform themselves in this matchup in order to get the win against Ohio State?
Well, it's a toss-up on the offensive side, and it all starts with who's going to be at quarterback. It doesn't matter who's at quarterback, Drew Aller or Bo Pribula. Whoever is at quarterback has to elevate their game to the best of their ability. You go back to what Drew did last year on the road in Ohio State, his first real big test, 18 for 42, under 200 passing yards, and just 1 touchdown. And then the mantra and the talk and conversation around Drew Aller was he can't win the big game. We saw it against Michigan at home later that season as well. So if he's good to go, if he's healthy, we're not sure exactly the status on it. James Franklin said earlier this week that it might be a game time decision. It's going to rely on his ability to elevate his game, prove that he has the capability to be a potential first-round draft pick that some people have. And same thing with Bo Pribula. We saw what he can do. We saw how he fits into this Andy Koltenicki style of offense. He was really, really solid for Penn State. And I think Koltenicki, he kind of really utilized that during his time in Kansas. He could be something that could be a potential X factor for Penn State in that one. But again, whoever starts at quarterback has to play the best game of their lives. And moving over to the defensive side, obviously Abdul Carter is a big name. We're going to talk about him. Yeah. He spent some time between edge and linebacker with the potential injury to deny Dennis Sutton, who may not play on the edge or at all on Saturday. If Abdul Carter plays at the edge, he has to elevate his game. The edge has not necessarily been his best so far this season, not been his strongest. He's obviously been better where he normally is at the linebacker spot. But this is another guy that's projected first-round draft pick, has to prove that he can play in those big moments. And how about Alonzo Ford Jr., a guy, and the guy on the screen right here, Jalen Reed, someone that was phenomenal in that game against Wisconsin, was really, really solid, dominant, had that pick six that really turned the tides for Penn State. And with the injury to KJ Winston, he has really stepped up on the other side, has been fantastic. So you're going to look for the secondary to have a big game, and Abdul Carter, especially defensively, if Penn State wants to win.
Yeah, it's going to require some big plays from a lot of big players and a lot of, not star guys as well. Tyler Warren on the offensive side is going to have to play a really, really big contributing factor for this team to come out with a win against that Ohio State squad. And like we said, that big matchup looms with the number four Ohio State Buckeyes coming into town. College game day and big noon kickoff will amp up the excitement to levels unknown this weekend in Happy Valley. Penn State will look to break a 6-game losing streak against the Buckeyes in what would be their first win since 2016. But from Beaver to Jeffrey, let's jump over to Sophia with our soccer insiders.
I'm now joined by Anna LaCastro and Owen Camaros. The men's team recently suffered a loss to Wisconsin in a 2-0 game. Anna, what do you think caused the outcome in this game?
Well, from the perspective of standing on the field for that whole game, which, by the way, was very cold and windy, I could see firsthand that Wisconsin's ball movement was just better and faster, hands down. And that's the kind of thing you want to see when you're watching good soccer. Not just lobs into the offensive zone, but a team that can actually pass quickly and effectively and move up the field as a unit. And that is what Wisconsin had over Penn State in that game. Penn State was not able to build an attack out of the back without losing the ball in their own attacking third. The closest thing they had to real effective forward movement was having Malik Dowda dribble straight through the middle of the field. And he had some good through balls off of that, but they were going to forwards who ended up losing the ball immediately because they were put in a 4v1 situation right away, which never works out.
Yeah, I agree completely with your point. Dowda was the lone bright spot in a very tough game. I think for Penn State, the issue is not just an issue we saw versus Wisconsin, but an issue we've seen all year. They play an outdated 4-4-2 style. The 4-4-2 formation no longer exists in professional soccer, or rarely does exist, and if it does, it's played in a diamond. There's a reason you see in professional soccer in both the American, European landscape, and it's come into the collegiate landscape as well. Teams don't play 4-4-2, they play 4-3-3, they play 3-5-2. Penn State plays a 4-4-2, which usually tries to help a team control the wide areas. The problem is the Nittany Lions don't control the wide areas. They play very narrow. They try to play through the middle with their two players, Dowda and Freddie Bell. Dowda's a great player. Bell's a great player. They're not going to be good enough to play 2 versus 3, and we saw it versus Wisconsin, where Wisconsin dominated the midfield, and that helped Wisconsin get the ball into players like Dean Boltz up top, who had an incredibly good game running in the Nittany Lions back line. On the flip side, the Nittany Lions, despite how good Abubakar Kamara is, despite how good whoever's going to play next to him is, whether that's Dion or Chase Oliver or players like that, if you can't get the ball to those players, it's not going to matter. And that's what happens is we see the 2 strikers for Penn State completely left on an island. It happened versus Wisconsin. It's the reason the Nittany Lions had very minimal big chances and shots on goal.
Definitely, just like you said, Penn State needs to update their play to see success. But the men's team season has ultimately been underwhelming. They've been eliminated from the Big Ten tournament. But on a more positive note, I'll start with you, Owen. What do you think the Penn State men's team needs to change to be more successful in the future?
Well, first off, they definitely need to change their formation. They were active in their recruiting last year. They were very active. They went out and got players like Kamara. They went out and got players like Kojo Dadsey. Not necessarily the most effective players this season, at least in Dadsey is concerned. And Kamara's been here a couple of years. The thing with Penn State is if they're going to be active in their transfers, they need to get them right. They need to bring in players that can make an impact. The other thing for the Nittany Lions, change the formation. Figure out how to use players like Malik Dowda. We talked about the quality that he has. He's the number 16 freshman in the top drawer freshman soccer rankings this year at midseason. He's a very, very good player. I think he's actually better than the 16th freshman. I think it's just a frustration thing that freshmen are usually, a player like him, it's center defensive mid. He's not going to get as many accolades and get as many, goals and assists, which leads to him being lower on the list than a player like Dean Boltz, who's number 1. So I think for Penn State, use him more, switch formation, active in the transfer window.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with Owen. The formation, what I'd love to see is either They somehow find a way to make the 4-4-2 formation successful, don't isolate the forward so much and actually use the width of the field. Or the other option is to change it up. And I'd love to see them try something that actually focuses on generating an attack through the middle of the field. I think that'd be very effective if they focus up as a team on really strengthening the center midfield, which really should be the core of their formation.
I completely agree with you. That's something to look forward to in the next season. But moving on from the men's team to the women's team, they've had a more successful season, although they recently lost to Ohio State. Anna, what were your thoughts about this game?
Yeah, so in terms of women's versus men's, they have had a more successful season, but they are also on a not so hot streak right now. We knew the California trip was going to be tough, and it was. They came away with a tie and a loss, and then the Ohio State loss was just hard. Obviously, in terms of goal differential, a 4-1 loss is not something Penn State wants to see. Their only goal, of course, from Miss Caitlin McBean, her 14th on the season. But this is actually what I talked about when we sat down last time when we were talking about Penn State women's soccer. And I was saying that they need to lose the slow start because they can't rely on some kind of second half comeback. That's not always going to happen. That's not reliable. And against Ohio State, we watched them go down by 3 goals before they were able to score, and they couldn't recover. And that is something that definitely is not going to fly in Big Ten tournament play.
Yeah, I think McBean's a very, very good player. She's been able to do it on her own. We've seen it. She scored hat tricks, scored great goals. The thing is, if Penn State's solely reliant on her in big tournament matches, it's just not going to be a recipe for success. The thing with the Nittany Lions, they're very good defensively. They're very good in the first half. They have lost second halves this season. It's kind of been a live or die by the second half. And Penn State, they've died by it more than they've lived by it, if we're being honest. The Nittany Lions go into the tournament off on a really rough streak. I mean, they've lost some tough matches, lost versus Ohio State, lost versus UCLA, teams like that. You never want to go into a tournament when you're in a bad run of form because it just doesn't breed well into the tournament. They're going to have some time. They're going to have some time to play. They're going to have some time to, practice and train and get their heads right. But I worry with the Nittany Lions, even if they do beat Minnesota, who they play, then it's versus UCLA. And UCLA is a team that for Penn State, I don't think Penn State has a recipe for success against them, and that's my worry.
That's something the Penn State team needs to work on going forward into their next games, such as Minnesota. They'll play them in the next Big Ten tournament. They've played them before and they won. But what do you think are some of the thoughts about this game coming up, and how do you think the Nittany Lions will play?
I mean, for starters, if we go back to that game, it was a weird game. It was a very weird game at Jeffrey Field. It was a physical battle. The Nittany Lions scored early, then went down 2 goals. Harper scored. Romine scored maybe the best goal I've seen at Jeffrey Field all year. Very, very good player. Very, very good goal. Penn State clawed their way back in. D'Amico scores to seal the game very late on. With Penn State, my worry is just going to be, one, they're away from home, and Minnesota, frankly, is at home. Tournament is being held in Minnesota. It'll be a home crowd. The Nittany Lions haven't been great away from home. They haven't been great against good competition. Minnesota being able to host the tournament, I think, is really going to give them an edge.
Yeah. So facing Minnesota away, like you just said, going to be tough. It's going to be a really physical game like we saw last time. There's going to be a lot of fouls, and the crowd is obviously going to sway towards Minnesota every time. So Penn State is going to need to get really comfortable with fighting back and with being the bad guy. But I think that we saw them prove themselves. We saw them prove themselves against Minnesota already just earlier this month, beating them at Jeffrey Field. I think if they can go into an away match with the same confidence they played with at home, then they'll be okay.
That's going to be a game to watch for us. Let's hope Penn State can pull out the same win they did last time. Moving on from soccer, let's head to field hockey. It's almost the end of the regular season with just 1 game remaining, and the Nittany Lions held their senior day last week. Cora Rodriguez has the story.
A bittersweet moment for any student athlete is senior day, and that is no different for the Penn State Nittany Lions. The Nittany Lions field hockey team had their senior day on October 20th against Michigan State. The ceremony took place before the game started, but who were honored during this ceremony? The seniors are Sophia Acosta, Lauren Delgado, Jerry Schnarr, Julianne Van Beckham,
Fia Gladio, Drew Taylor, Julia Lamb, and Aubrey Semler.
All of the seniors contributed to their teams on their own defensive and offensive way. But let's talk about 2 seniors that either shone during the season or during the Michigan State game. Fia Gladio grew up in Boyertown, PA, and came to Penn State in 2020, marking this as her 5th season. She is the 4th Nittany Lion to become a U.S. Olympian as she played in the 2024 Paris Games. She is also the leading scorer in Penn State field hockey history, with 91 goals under her belt. She was also Penn State's Female Athlete of the Year in 2022, as she helped the team make it to the NCAA field hockey semifinals. Julianne Van Beckham is from the town called Best, located in the Netherlands, and played there until she came to Penn State in 2023. She played in the highest levels in the Netherlands before coming to Penn State. She was also on the NFHCA National All-Academic Team in 2023 because of her grades off the field. One of her highlights from this year's season was her goal against Michigan State that got Nittany Lions on the board. Each and every senior brought their own shine to the Penn State field hockey program. For Penn State Sports Night, I'm Cora Rodriguez.
Fia Gladio is definitely a key player for the Nittany Lions. She's the top all-time scorer here at Penn State for field hockey. She went to the Olympics, she played there, but overall this season has been underwhelming for her. The field hockey team hasn't been seeing the results they wanted to see. They lost their pink out game, and they almost lost senior night. They only won from one overtime point.
Yeah, it's been an underwhelming season for sure. They came in, got a brand new facility, just renovated their field. It looks great, by the way. But, the team has not been executing to the same level that, a lot of people expected them to come into the season doing. They're still holding on to kind of their spot right now, but it's not the level of play that I think a lot of people expected out of our field hockey team this year.
Yeah, they definitely need to take up their play moving forward into the next season. Last weekend, the Penn State women's volleyball team hosted their Dig Pink match. This match had extra meaning to it. Ethan Ellis has the story.
A wave of pink engulfed the stands at Rec Hall as Penn State took on Minnesota in their annual Dig Pink game. An undefeated conference record hung in the balance under the lights as the Golden Gophers looked to play spoiler. But after the first set, it was clear this would be a tough task. Overcoming a slow start, the Nittany Lions rattled off 7 consecutive points to take the first set.
A good job of being more steady with it and figuring out what they do early on and really flipping it back on them.
Jess Merzik's 11 kills and .325 hitting percentage led the Nittany Lions in scoring, a theme that's been common throughout the season.
Jess is, I think she's one of the best, outside hitters in the league and in the country. But, I think Jess expects to win all the time, and she'll want to take as many swings as she needs to for this group to win.
On a night where 3 former national championship teams were recognized, the Nittany Lions pulled off the sweep versus Minnesota. The game also featured Cameron Hanna's 1,500th kill of her career.
I don't even think it's about the amount of kills. It's just the people that I get to do it with.
And today's Dig Pink match here at Rec Hall was extra special for the Penn State Nittany Lions after head coach Katie Schumacher-Cauley announced her breast cancer diagnosis on Instagram earlier this week. While Schumacher-Cauley did not answer questions about her diagnosis at the post-game press conference, she did offer her support of the cause being celebrated that night.
And the fact that we can raise some money to continue to push medicine forward, I think it's really special.
For Penn State Sports Night, I'm Ethan Ellis.
We wish the best of luck to Coach. The Penn State women's volleyball team has been on a tear as of late. The Nittany Lions have won 12 straight games dating back to September 20th against JMU. I'm now joined by Ethan Ellis, Penn State Sports Night's very own volleyball reporter. And Ethan, Penn State just went out on the road against UCLA and USC. They dropped 1 set to USC. UCLA took them to 3 sets, and they just swept Minnesota in their match at home. Did these close games on the road surprise you at all?
They didn't surprise me too much, if I'm being honest. First off, USC, that's a ranked opponent. So finishing a match in 4 sets against a ranked opponent, that's pretty good. I mean, the only thing more you could ask for is a sweep, which they've done a couple times, but still, a 1-set loss is not that bad versus USC. UCLA, yeah, maybe I was a tiny bit surprised. I mean, Jess Merzik, not her best game by far, but still, I mean, it's still a road win, and that's huge in the Big Ten. I mean, Katie Schumacher-Cauley has talked about it ad nauseum this season about how hard it can be to win on the road. And time after time, the Nittany Lions have won on the road in the Big Ten. So they came to the West with a huge task ahead of them. These teams, they don't really go across the country that often. So with the time change and then also with these away atmospheres, it can be tough on players. And I think Penn State still stepped up to the challenge and still did a good enough job to where they still have an undefeated record in the Big Ten. And the other thing you look at is how the Nittany Lions, especially in this UCLA game, how they rebounded after losing those 2 sets. You think the second set they lost, they come back in the third set, they win by 10 points, I believe it was. Then the fifth set, after losing the fourth set, they come back, they win 15-9. I mean, that's about as good of a rebound as you could ask for. So what I'm seeing from that is they're realizing their mistakes, they're seeing where UCLA is beating them, and they're able to fix that on the fly. And that's what makes a good team.
Yeah, that's what makes a good team for sure. Now they get to kind of return to a more relaxed atmosphere, more, normal atmosphere. They've got regular Big Ten opponents coming up. They've got Iowa at home, Michigan at home this week as well. Number 8 Wisconsin is kind of looming on the horizon. So what does Penn State need to do to turn around these West Coast, games that were a little frightening, a little scary, especially that UCLA match? What do they need to do to turn that around and deliver some good performances at home?
Right. Well, I think you can kind of take notes almost from that UCLA match. You saw what Jess Merzick did when she didn't have her best game, and that'll happen. I mean, That's Penn State's best player. Defenses all over the Big Ten are going to be studying Penn State's game tape, which they have a ton of at this point with how far we are into the season. They're going to be studying her tape. They're going to be figuring out how to adjust their defenses to where they can block her, and they're figuring out where she's hitting on the court so that they can dig her kills. So it's just Penn State. They need to find someone else other than just Jess Merzick to score in this team. Yeah. You think Cameron Hanna, you think Maggie Mendelson, who was starting to show a little bit of promise early in the season, hasn't been as much as we thought she'd be, but still, they just need to spread out somewhat the scoring. You can't rely solely on Jess Merzick. I mean, these defenses, they're going to figure her out. And then what are you left with? You're left with being taken to 5 sets by an unranked team. So I think if they can somewhat spread out the scoring, Iowa and Michigan aren't going to be that much of a problem. And Wisconsin, Nebraska, not going to be that big either.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about it. They have plenty of players they can spread the ball out to. They've got Cameron Hanna alongside Jess Merzick if she's having an off day. You also think Caroline Jurevicius, like you mentioned, Maggie Mendelson, Taylor Trammell in the front as well. A lot of people they can spread it around to, but they just got to do a better job. Izzy Stark's got to do a better job of getting it to them, getting them plays set up so that they can score and take the pressure off of Merzick up at the top. And with plenty of big games to go, once again, including that big matchup against number 2 Nebraska in the future, the Nittany Lions have a long way to go, just like the rest of this dear old state update. Stay right here after the break where Sophia will talk hockey with Anthony Descher and Cassie Vaselis.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for tuning into this edition of Penn State Sports Night.
For all of us here at the Belisari Media Center, we are
Penn State Sports Night.
Live from the campus of Penn State University, this is PSN News.
Penn State Network News is a student-produced, bi-weekly live news show featuring all student talent.
From local and national news to sports, entertainment, weather, and live interviews, we have it all.
We also feature student-made packages from across campus.
Airing every Monday and Wednesday at 7 p.m.
We are PSN News.
Be sure to check us out on Twitter and Facebook at PSN News, on Instagram at Penn State Network News, and to subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/PSN News.
Have a good night and stay safe, Penn State. Hey everyone, we are Red Carpet News, your main source of entertainment news at Penn State University.
Man, this festival is going to be popping.
I'm Alex Porzillo, here with Dave Harold.
He's going to 23rd with Daddy Elon Warbucks to actual space away from Kip.
So in sync, especially during Kendrick's part when they came out, reporting on anything from music, movies, TV shows, fashion, to celebrity gossip. You don't want to miss out on any of the hot topics we discuss. Find our segments on YouTube under the name Red Carpet News for your daily dose of entertainment. We are Red Carpet News.
Welcome back to Dear Old State Update. I'm Sophia Koch, joined by men's hockey beat reporters Cassie Vaselis and Anthony Descher. The men's team took on St. Lawrence at home Friday and Saturday. Both games resulted in a win for the Nittany Lions. Cassie, what were some factors that you think contributed to the win we saw?
Yeah, I think that there was a bunch of different factors, but I think that the main factor was Arseny Sergeyev. He was huge. There he is, brick wall. It was his first series in Pegula, which you could tell he had a little nerves. It was his first time in front of the Roar Zone. He said it was a bit frightening, which he let in 2 goals within 4 minutes in that first game. But once he got comfortable, he was really, really good for the team. He made 39 saves. He only let in 3 goals against for the whole series. So he was a key player for that. And especially, you could tell that the team has a lot of confidence in him, whether that's on the ice or when they're talking about him. They have a lot of confidence in him. And especially when it comes to something like the penalty kill, which is still perfect, he plays a huge role in that.
Yeah, you mentioned the penalty kill, but I just want to mention Sergeyev one more time. He just comes up large when he has to. Really, the brick wall you see right behind us is exactly what he is. And would you consider a big save of his to be Grand Larceny? I mean, I'm terrible with jokes and puns, but we'll move on to that penalty kill, which is perfect. Giuliano Pagliaro has made this penalty kill just work out so well, taking old film, seeing what they need to improve upon, and putting into the players now and helping them become this perfect penalty kill unit, and also applying pressure on the other end to put the team on their heels when they least expect it on the other side. Just 23 for 23. That's very impressive. It does not get much better than that, literally, because it is perfect. And a lot of that has to do with the defense. I really like what I've seen from the freshmen, Cade Christensen and Nick Fascia, especially, just being able to play their roles so well. Very fun to watch. I know you're going to talk about some other freshmen in a second, but just seeing what they did against St. Lawrence with that special unit was just really, really fun to watch.
Yeah, and on that penalty kill, when you look at it, the Saints came in number 4 in the nation on power play goals, and that didn't even seem to look like it fazed the Nittany Lions. Obviously, the defense had to be strong, so did Sergeyev, but they really held on with that. But like you said, Cade Christensen, Guy Godowski kind of shouted him out. You said that he had a lot of good blocks, and he won the puck battles that he needed to win. And when you look at the penalty kill, another huge part of that is the face-offs. You need to win the face-offs. It's really good to win that first one so you can waste some time. And the Nittany Lions did really good on those. Charlie Serrato and Keaton Peters, they got their first goal this past weekend, and they were really, really good on that face-off dot. They were over 75%. So that really helped the team.
Yeah, Peters and Serrato is such a small slice of this giant, great unit that Penn State hockey has right now. And I mean, getting that instant offense, being able to win the face-off is just so important, especially in your own zone, and being able to, turn defense into offense just off of a good face-off can mean so much down the line. And you talk about the freshmen, I'll talk about the sophomores, because Aiden Fink has been phenomenal. I mean, who guessed it? I mean, he's just been really good his career here with Penn State, towards the very top of the league when it comes to points leaders. I mean, there's a lot of players in college hockey. Being up that high means you're a really good player, which he is. And he also has that chemistry with Reese Laubach. We've seen it last year with the kid line, and we're seeing it again this year. Reese Laubach having a really important goal in the St. Lawrence series, and seeing what Aiden Fink and him been able to do, really special.
It was an exciting game from the faceoffs to the goaltender, just like you said. But next, the Nittany Lions will head to Minnesota to take on the Golden Gophers. Anthony, what do you think about this upcoming game and how it will play out for Penn State?
Well, it's a very important game because it is a Big Ten opponent. You want to start the year off right, especially in that slate. I'm looking at the storylines of Minnesota bouncing Penn State in the first round of the Big Ten tournament last year. There's going to be a sense of revenge, even though these players are going to say, oh, we're going to treat it like another game. But also Liam Soulier, who transferred to Minnesota, an old friend. But Aiden Fink says, well, it's not really buddy-buddy anymore. It's more enemies versus enemies because different size. These guys are competitive. Maybe they'll talk afterwards, after Saturday. They'll have a nice little, maybe a dinner or whatever. But it's not going to be too sweet between these two teams. And if Penn State can get off to the right foot against Minnesota, steal a win in Minnesota, they're off to a great start in the Big Ten slate.
Yeah, it'll definitely be tough. A lot of Big Ten teams, they're going to be tough to play. Minnesota has a lot of really key goal scorers, which might pose a threat to Sergeyev and the defense, but they have a lot of chemistry, the defense and Sergeyev, so I think that that'll definitely help. And also, looking back into the power plays, Minnesota has converted only 24%. So if they do get a power play, hopefully the Nittany Lions can stay undefeated on that penalty kill. But Guy Godowski said that he's not too worried about it. They're just going to play their game. They're going to have to play on an extremely high level because of playing Minnesota and they're going to bring a high level, but he thinks that they're just going to play their game and they got it.
That's going to be a game to tune in and watch. Either team could easily dominate, and it's going to be exciting. Thank you, Anthony and Cassie. Now let's head over to the Bryce Jordan Center, where Penn State men's basketball is preparing for their second season under Mike Rhodes. Our Amanda Vogt went to the team's local media day last week. Let's have a look.
Time is ticking down toward the start of a new Penn State basketball season. Mike Rhodes will be starting his second season as head coach of the Nittany Lions. With 5 seniors on the team, including Ace Baldwin Jr., there's a strong foundation of leadership. Rhodes instituted a culture of work that correlated to a strong off-season development.
The work isn't just the way you play, but it's how you act off the court. It's how you walk into the weight room. It's how you take care of your body. It's when you get into practice. It's how you compete. It's how coachable you are.
Rhodes says it's time to start building sustainable success within the program. For Penn State, that means a spot in the NCAA tournament this season. That might seem like a tall order, but the Penn State players are deriving confidence from a why not us mentality.
For Baldwin, that meant hitting the gym 3 times a day. He just wants to win.
I was sick and tired of losing. I don't feel like we did a good enough job last year, and it wasn't acceptable. So.
Even with new faces on the roster, the vibes in the locker room are already high. Nick Kern Jr. described the team as truthful, which has been pivotal during practices. Come game time, though, Rhodes won't waste any time and plans on throwing the freshmen in the fire from the get-go.
Some days they're going to be pretty good. You'll be writing about them. Other days as freshmen, sometimes you learn by getting burned, but I'm going to play them.
Rhodes says the team has more shooters, and while Penn State already played at a faster pace than most of their opponents, the team has only gotten faster. The Nittany Lions will kick off their season on November 4th against Binghamton. For Penn State Sports Night, I'm Amanda Vogt.
There's a lot of optimism, surrounding this men's basketball team in Mike Rhodes' second year here, expecting a really, really big year from Nick Kern and Ace Baldwin. What about the women's team?
I mean, the women's team definitely has a lot they need to improve on to have a successful season overall. With almost all of Penn State's fall and winter sports underway, let's take a look at top plays over the past few weeks here in University Park.
In the number 5 spot, we've got Kendall Butsey finding Stella Retram right outside the crease. She'll knock that one home in a goal for what ended up being a 4-1 Penn State victory over Dartmouth last weekend. In at the number 4 spot, we've got Aiden Fink, and he finds Reese Lawback in the slot, and Reese Lawback puts that one in the back of the net to tie up the game and what ended up being a 3-2 Penn State victory. In at our number 3 spot, we've got Jess Maruzic swinging in from the back line. She'll get a kill right there against Minnesota in a 3-0 sweep.
Let's take a look at field hockey. Elle Jennis scores the overtime winning goal against Michigan State, giving Penn State the 2-1 win against the Spartans. Our number 1 spot is Penn State goaltender Arsenij Sergeyev makes the window mill save for the Nittany Lions. Look at the slow motion replay on that save as Sergeyev stretches out to secure the win against St. Lawrence.
More top plays and Penn State coverage is already underway, so stay tuned on our social media sites for live updates and content from each sporting event we cover.
Look for Ethan Ellis at women's volleyball on both Wednesday and Friday. Some fresh faces at Pagula Ice Arena this week. Cora Rodriguez with field hockey on Friday, and some BJC basketball with Bronwyn and Amanda next Monday.
Well, time's up on tonight's Dear Old State update, but make sure to keep an eye out for all of our content all week and all semester long on both YouTube and Instagram. For Sophia Coach, Jeremy Rose, and the rest of our Penn State Sports Night crew, we wish you a happy Halloween. Thank you for tuning in and have a great night.